It's great to be here today. We're presenting on trends and things that are exciting and interesting for the future of education that's going to revolutionize and improve education for our students. My name is Dr. Kathleen Hermsmeyer. I am the superintendent of this, which I didn't put on my slide. I should have put what my network is, my Springs Charter Schools Network. I operate 6 charter schools in independent schools in Southern California, covering the 6 counties of Imperial, San Diego, Riverside, San Bernardino, Los Angeles, and Orange County. And we are we operate 24 separate student center locations and serve 10,500 students. And we've been doing this for about 20 years. So we have made so many changes over these 20 years in order to keep improving a constant improvement process, of course. So that's me. And now I'd like to introduce Margaret Fortune.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Margaret Fortune. I'm the president and CEO of Fortune School. We're a network of public charter schools in Sacramento and San Bernardino, California. I founded our network, which is 9 schools of over 2,300 students, to close the African American achievement gap by preparing kids for college starting in kindergarten. We are a K through 12 network of schools, and those of you who run high schools will appreciate that this year we have our first graduating class, so we are super excited. I'm also the co-chair of the Freedom Coalition for Charter Schools, which is a national advocacy organization for Black and Brown charter school leaders across the country. It represents 21 states. So glad to be here with you today.
Thank you. And Mary?
Good morning. My name is Mary Cox. I'm the executive director of Core Butte Charter School in Northern California. So between the 3 of us, we represent almost the entire state of California. I'm located up in Butte County, which for those of you familiar with California, that's Chico area. I run a K-12 personalized learning charter school with 1,000 students, and we serve 11 counties up in Northern California. Core Butte started in 1998, so we've been around for over 20 years, adapting and changing, much like our other 2 charter leaders here, to the new times. So we look forward to sharing with you this presentation and hope for it to be somewhat interactive. So just a little bit of housekeeping. The chat feature on this forum, you probably all have utilized already. But just to let you know, if you're looking for a chat feature that everyone will see, please enter your chat on the right-hand side under What's on Your Mind so that we can see it in the stream. If you click on the comment button, it sometimes gets hidden down in the messaging stream. So if you have a question, we'll happily stop. We originally wanted this to be a panelist style program, but with the way this platform works, that was harder for us to accomplish. So please feel free to type in any questions there on the chat. One of us will pause where we're at and go ahead and try and address your question as a forum. We'd prefer to answer your questions than follow along through our slides. So thank you so much, and thanks for joining us this morning, and we'll go ahead and get started.
All right, so this is basically some of the discussion items for today, which is how has the pandemic provided opportunities for us to change education after the pandemic? I mean, you know, we're still in it, but we want to take what the best things are and move them on integrate them into our systems later. What are the issues with the current education system, and what are some ideas for improving public education? What type of citizen do we need to produce to be successful in today's world, not the world of 100 years ago when public education was first begun? And how can we ensure that the kids are successful not just in school but after graduation? And we'll take a little tour of educational trends and how they might help our students. So this little graphic is showing you where we are right now in the middle of this pandemic. You know, we have the opportunity to be the hero in this journey when it comes to the pandemic and how we respond to this. and the pandemic actually can allow us to grow and develop, or we can just simply endure. And how much we embrace the moment and try to learn from it, it will determine, how improved our schools are after. So this kind of just really struck me as kind of, we are on a hero's journey right now.
Before we move on, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that previous slide.
Yeah.
One of the things that we were talking about as charter leaders is that during the pandemic, we've had to make difficult choices. Some of those opportunities, others and obstacles, really high quality opportunity is, and to change, say that as forward of that is seeing these new times. So our invitation are right now rising tension, we're crises, clients we are seeing lead the edge. So while it is a blessing when education truly our students and charter really take the opportunity to thrive in great experience. We are moving, we fit quick, we can really challenges. So embrace them, and as we walk through this journey today, we're going to address some of those things that we've embraced.
And you notice the little guy at the very end, he's singing a song. So you've got to start writing your ballad, the ballad of the hero's ballad that you're gonna that you and your staff are going to sing at the end of all this, of how you conquered the beast, right?
Right on.
So, all right, just to set the stage, I have a 2-minute video, if you'll indulge us. This is just talking about how one school has embraced some new trends to make a truly 21st century public school.
There's this problem, which is that the model that we have for educating kids, it is a mass production. It's a factual, provide individualized experience to kind of anybody. Every 45 minutes, kids switch to a different subject, and they open a textbook and they read the next chapter, and at the end of it, they take a quiz. That experience is teaching kids how to think like computers, and that's not going to be very valuable when these kids actually grow up to be adults. If you're trying to fundamentally transform the education experience, that is not something that you can just kind of whiteboard with a bunch of research and a bunch of smart people in a room somewhere. You have to learn what the model is like. That meant immediately I'm starting the company. And more schools at this now and doesn't try out them to learn this thing right now in this way, and that's where technology plays a foundational role versus a superficial role. There are two tools that fundamentally enable personalization in our schools. One tool is called the portrait. So this is a representation of all of the things that are important about each child that different people can add to for creating a day education experience that's going to meet them where they are. That maps to a second tool, which we call the playlist, which is the kind of scaffold for each child's day. It's a calendar things. This playlist older allowed to have.
Sorry, why my that keeps coming up every time. It never does that. So we're basically focusing on how to build a better school system, and with those ideas of student-centered, diverse models, and being mindfully making the decision of what we're going to do for our students. All right, so now let's get into the panel part of this. So these are some of the strategic school structure, the trends in structuring school. And these are, I think, 6 very current trends that a lot of schools are toying with at the moment. And so let's talk about each of these. And we're going to start with Mary talking a little bit about the changing role of the teacher.
So I see in the chat that my audio is somewhat choppy. So I apologize. And Margaret and Kathleen, I'll just let you interrupt me if my audio is not working well enough to present. So please feel free to do so. As far as the changing role of the teacher, one of the things our school has really moved away from is that idea of sage on the stage and the teacher being the core focus of education. And we've completely switched the focus of education to be completely student-centered. So our teachers are now moving from being the primary educator to being a facilitator, guide, and partner in the educational opportunity. So now we're working with parents and students, teachers as a team around each individual student. Now, I'm not saying this doesn't come without a million challenges, because our teachers still consistently want to default to that role of being in front of the classroom and delivering content. But in this changing age, as I'm sure all of you are very aware, students have access to content with the snap of their fingers. How they apply that content, how they interact with that content, how they use that content to grow and change as citizens in our society, that's how our teachers engage. Our teachers are engaging with that portion of education. So they're no longer just teaching the content, they're now engaging their students with the content and asking them the hard questions and really encouraging them to dive into the educational opportunity. So when you're walking around our school, you don't see teachers in front of the classroom. You see them sitting at tables, sitting next to students, maybe not during the pandemic, just to be fair. They might be 6 feet apart, but regardless, the role has truly changed. So I know in Margaret and Kathleen's school, their roles of their teachers have also changed, but it might look slightly different. So I'm not sure if either of you would like to kind of talk about that role of your teachers.
I'd love to build on that, Mary, because it very much syncs and aligns with what we do at Fortune School. And just to give you some context on Fortune School, we are 65% of our student enrollment is African American. There are 12 majority Black schools in the state of California that are in the top half of academic performance in English language arts and math. And Fortune School has 4 of the schools on that list. So, and at our flagship schools, 66% of our students are proficient in English language arts and mathematics on the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium, which is our state administered assessment. So with the transition to Common Core, really moved from that direct instruction model to a model where the teacher is facilitator. And one of the things that we saw in a school in Brooklyn, because we frequently visit schools from around the country, was teachers using a technique called habits of discussion. It's basically a way to have the Socratic method, to have student-focused conversations where students are leading the conversation. But this particular set of skill sets with habits of discussion, we start that in kindergarten. So that our students can have the language to have an interactive discourse around the content. We have a series of sentence starters, hand signals. If I were to use my hand signals, I would say that I would like to build on what Mary had to say. They signal to each other if they agree with something, or if they disagree, or maybe they're in the middle, and that triggers the next student to call upon their peer to keep the conversation going. And one of the things that we learned, because we have a partnership with Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and we talked to the science and math faculty, and they said, gosh, our kids are really bright, but if you ask them to talk to their neighbor about the math, they freeze. So if you could start in kindergarten through 12th grade, teaching kids how to lead and have discussions about the content, that will help them to be Cal Poly ready. And so we've done that, and it has changed the role of the teacher.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic. I'd love to learn more about that, Margaret. I think those hand signals are great. I think it's a fantastic way for people to be participating without interrupting, kind of, right in there. I would say that one thing for us with the changing role of the teacher, everything that Mary said is similar to what we do. But also, one thing that is totally research based and 100% in most schools not done enough, which is feedback conversations. So ultimately, knowledge of results is one of the most important factors of student improvement. And the problem with knowledge of results is the child turns in the paper, the teacher grades it over the weekend or whatever, and then a few days later, the graded paper is on the child's desk. That is not, most kids we know are not going to take any feedback from that paper because it was done too long before, and they don't even remember what they did. So for us, having time in the day, structuring the school schedule, structuring the day so that a lot of time is available to the teacher to be sitting down with the child, basically, to the extent possible, we want the child to grade their own work for the day-to-day practice work. And then if it's work that's more, more developed, more difficult for the child to grade by themselves, like an essay, we want the teacher to grade that paper in front of the child, with the child, having conversation about it, because this is more meaningful and this is going to actually give the child the feedback that they need in a real time at the moment that they need it. But what that means is you have to free your teacher up from constantly doing direct instruction. So that's the give and take. So I've told my teachers, I don't want you, you're working too hard bringing this stuff home. You need to be grading the stuff right in the classroom with the child. Do not bring that work home. You can bring planning work home, but not grading work. So that, for us, that's very, very important. In terms of school schedule, one thing that I will bring up is we tend to schedule our elementary programs in large blocks of time. And so students can be working on a variety of subjects while teachers are pulling small groups. And so the child may have a sort of a map of what they're supposed to do in the day. And there's no like specific time for spelling and for doing their independent work. They can do the independent work when they choose, which we know is extremely motivating. In addition, we're changing our high school schedule. And this is something where we've piloted this year and we're moving into it next year, into 6 modules in the year. So instead of the kids taking 6 classes at one time and they're having to manage 6 different classes, they might take 2 or 3 classes during each 26-day module. And then we have time in between, and we call them swag days. And now that I'm talking about it, I can't remember. Swag stands for something. I think it stands for students with a goal. Okay. So anyway, so it means that if they need time to actually improve their grade or, complete the work, they would have those times in those swag days. In addition, because each module is scheduled with 4 blocks, but they may only be taking 2 or 3, they have study hall time or, time where they can work if they still need to catch up from the previous module, because some kids need more time, but some kids don't. So it's having flexible schedules, especially for high school, in order to make sure that there's mastery for every student, is the missing element in a lot of schools right now. And when the school schedule marches on and there's no flexibility in that schedule and the child has failed, they kind of feel like it's hopeless, right? Because there's nothing that they can do. It's things have marched on. So anyway, this gives them new hope every module, because everything starts fresh at the next module. So even if they have to redo the work from the previous, it's okay. All right.
All right, Kathleen, I'm going to be the jump in, build on queen. How about that? Is that okay?
Yeah, for sure.
This role of the school schedule, I see you, Mary. This role of the school schedule is so fundamental to our model. At Fortune School, our education philosophy is the 5 pillars. So it's high expectations, more time, focus on results, choice and commitment, and citizenship. So the pillar that's about more time is really all about that schedule. One thing I want to say to kind of complete a thought from this what I previously said about habits of discussion is that it translates this idea of teacher as facilitator and the way in which we do it with the habits of discussion translates into distance learning as well. So when you find yourself like we do in a Google Classroom, kind of scrolling through the students and trying to engage them on the screen, this way of having student-led discussions translates. And we always do what we monitor. So we monitor the extent to which teachers are using these practices. Now, with regards to the school schedule, and this is also related to the role of the teacher, our schedule has built-in center time. Now, we hear center time a lot as it relates to kindergartners, right? We prepare our centers. But we use that model all the way through 12th grade. And while you may see a teacher, even in the context of distance learning, pulling a small group with students that need extra support, you will see students working independently at their stations. And they know the routine, they know the schedule. And so stations may look like the small group that's pulled with the teacher or the instructional aide, a group of students working independently to advance themselves on their assignment. On a writing assignment, it may look like a group of students working on their Chromebooks in self-paced software that's designed to close achievement gaps. We use MobyMax for ELA, math, and science for that purpose. So this, and we build in more time. So we have on our schedule a longer instructional day and a longer instructional year. And the other thing I'll say that is in distance learning, when we first started in the spring during the school closures, we focused on asynchronous learning. We surveyed our students, teachers, and families and found that they were more interested in synchronous learning. So we have half days now of synchronous learning, 4 days a week for K through 8 and 5 days a week through high school. And the interesting thing about the schedule is that for our high school that has more synchronous learning time, chronic absenteeism has gone down to 0.
Wow.
Isn't that extraordinary? Yeah. Given our student population in the state of California, for all students, before you control for race or income, the chronic absenteeism rate of California students is 10%.
Yeah.
For Black students, it's 20%. So for a high school that has over 90% Black students to be at 0 during the pandemic is really extraordinary. And I really credit it to the schedule and
Well,
synchronous learning.
maybe the teachers, Margaret, because I think it's the right kind of synchronous learning that would bring the kids back, right? I mean, not all synchronous learning would make them want to show up.
Oh, for sure. I think in this environment, when we first were closed schools and went to distance learning, because unlike Kathleen and Mary, who have just tremendous experience with non-classroom based models, Fortune School is a traditional classroom based model. So we had to, like many schools across the country, learn very quickly, and we're still in a learning mode. But at the beginning, it was like about health and safety and wellness and joy.
Right.
Now it's about all those things and rigor. And we really worked hard over the summer months to have academic rigor and to learn how to engage students and to use more tools. Like something we use in addition to Google Classroom is Nearpod. And I will say, to Kathleen's early point, and then I'll stop here, is speaking to the things that we will continue to do after the pandemic. We will continue to use these tools. Nearpod is something that allows you to poll students, for students to give you written responses, and to do math problems, that type of thing, so that the teacher can see it. But it absolutely has to do with excellent teaching and learning, and that can happen even in this environment in a very rigorous and engaging way.
Great. Mary, do you want to say anything about the school schedule?
Well, our model already, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this when we get down to hybrid and blended models. As Margaret mentioned, my school was already somewhat of a hybrid blended model, not with virtual learning. We didn't have that option for our students, but in regards to our school schedule. So we actually naturally had a schedule where students could choose to be on campus anywhere from 1 to 4 days a week. And our schedule was blended and mixed such that they could pick and choose when they were on campus and when they were on homeschool or independent study learning. So we already had that kind of built into our school schedule. We did make some serious changes because of the pandemic, knowing that the model that we had wasn't going to really work for our students having to log on, log off, log on, log off for our high school, and how we were going to then meet their needs as individual learners. So we actually adjusted our schedule to be more of a block where each class actually was only once a week. And those students logged on just for the classes they were signed up for at campus. So it totally changed the model of teaching and the model of learning. So we had to do a lot of training with our students, but it allows us to open and close with very little disruption because our students are so comfortable with their small classes. We also made classes only 12 students. So they're super, super tiny at our high school. And that was such that they could truly get to know their teachers and students in a virtual environment. And then when they come back in person, they've already built those relationships. We were worried about what happens when you're first meeting students online. And if there's 30 kids in a breakout room versus 12, then you're probably losing half unless you have a phenomenal teacher who truly understands how to engage those students. And this is a change for all of us. All of our teachers are first-year teachers again. They're all having to learn how to now teach in this virtual environment. You know, they might have been the best, most expert teacher in a classroom environment. Now, how do we transition and translate that to a virtual environment? So we were trying to give our teachers every tool possible, which included incredibly small classes to try and meet those needs for the students. So that was where a couple just changes we made due to pandemic, which so far have proven to be excellent for us.
There's nothing worse than a Zoom with 35 students. You know, I mean, that is not a recipe, especially when it's first graders. I know my neighbor down the street, her kid is in a 32 children class in first grade, and she has to be on the Zoom, and the child was crying 3 days in a row because she didn't get called on. I mean, you can't get called on, not when there's on a Zoom with 31 other students. So that wasn't a good plan in my way of thinking. But anyway,
but it does depend on how they do it, because I think teachers, when properly trained, I have seen it done phenomenal with
Right.
groups of large students where they're able to create breakouts with systematic check-ins and intentional reaching out to students and making sure every student has a voice in the environment. It's definitely different, but it is very hard. And I just saw a
I'm
chat.
not so sure. I'm still not so sure about first graders, though. I mean, as a former first grade teacher, I don't know how. Just getting them to unmute is, a struggle at the beginning. Anyway, all right. Moving on to culturally responsive classrooms. Margaret.
Sure. Hey, Mary, question on what you just said. Did you have to hire more teachers in order to achieve those lower class sizes?
That's a great question. I kind of really quickly touched upon the idea that we changed our whole class schedule. So what we did for our teachers is that they're now teaching block classes. So they teach more classes, more periods of the same class, but their class sizes are smaller and the classes are meeting less hours a week. So they've literally had to change their whole mindset for delivering instruction, right? We were talking about how they're partners in the educational journey. So their assignments are the instruction. Their class time is the collaboration. So they've actually taken themselves out of the direct instruction teacher role during the virtual class environment, and they're purely facilitators of content. So it's really just changed their whole model, which has taken quite a bit of training, and it is not perfect. And we still struggle with some of our teachers, and really coaching and working with them to change that mindset. It's somewhat of the idea of a flipped classroom,
Yes.
that verbiage that was around about 10 years ago, where
Right.
the content, because content is at our fingertips, right? You can Google anything, pretty much. You have a calculator in your pocket, but you have to know how to apply it or it's wasted information, right? So our teachers are really focusing on how do we apply the knowledge. So they're really working on group discussions, on presentations, on interactions, and in the classroom versus information sharing.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's exactly what it made me think of as was a flipped classroom. Let me turn to culturally responsive classrooms. So the way I talk about this may sound a little differently than other dialogues that you've been to around this topic. Fortune School does something called setting the tone for learning before we ever get into academic content. And what that means is that we're teaching the kids the culture of the school. And when I say culture, I'm not talking about ethnicity or language. I'm talking about a culture of high expectations. And we're teaching them the rules and the routines for how we do school. And our philosophy around it is that we teach everything and assume nothing.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that I'm going to teach you how to get up out of your chair. I'm going to teach you how to go to the carpet. I'm going to teach you how to walk down the hallway. I'm going to teach you, again, with the sign language, the signs you're going to use to tell me you need to go to the bathroom, or you need to pick up your pencil off the floor, or you need some water, or you disagree, or you agree. We teach a series of hand signals for the commonly asked questions that students have so that we preserve the academic time and the instructional minutes for teachers to teach so that they're not constantly interrupted with hands saying, I need to go to the bathroom. So that is a part of the culture of the class that we're teaching. And we spend the first 10 days of school just teaching the culture of the school. This is how we're going to do school. As a result, with a high African American student population that typically tops the charts in student suspensions, we have low suspension rates. Our suspension rate is about 4%. Our expulsion rate is 0. And when you come to our classrooms, you see a lot of order and engagement of students because we have removed behaviors from being the focal point of the Black experience in school. And that's why I'm saying I'm talking about culturally responsive a little differently because responsiveness a little differently, because oftentimes when you have conversations about Black students, the first thing that comes up is suspension and discipline. In our environment, the first thing that comes up is rigor and joy and leadership and citizenship. But we're able to focus on those things because we have taught what our expectations are of scholars on the front end. And because we've taught all these things and we've named them and codified them and we've trained the teachers on how to talk about them, because we've done these things, it frees the students to deal with the content, the academic content. One of the best trainings that our principals go to and therefore can lead their teachers in this regard is offered by the Relay Graduate School of Education. It's the Principal Fellowship Program, and they unpack the book Get Better Faster, and it teaches teachers to create a culture of practice, which means that you practice using clear and concise language to teach these routines to students. You don't get up in front of students for the first time and say your spiel. So we literally have teachers practicing with other teachers as if they are doing the exercise, not narrating what they would do, but actually practicing it. And we do it again and again until we get it right. And that's what principals lead. The other important thing, and this is about data, that you learn in this National Principals Fellowship Program from Relay Graduate School of Education, which is a competitive national program, is about holding data meetings, how principals engage with their teachers and data meetings, looking at student work to identify exactly what the highest leverage point is for a scholar to do better. I want to come back to another practice that is key to our work in creating a culturally responsive classroom, and it's called aggressive monitoring. With aggressive monitoring, we teach our teachers to do laps around the classroom looking for something specific. First, it's looking for compliance. Did you write your name the year you're going to graduate from school, from college, that is, on the paper, and the date like I told you to? They make a lap and they look at each child's teacher, and they've got a tracker and they keep track. The next lap, they're going to be looking for, I asked you to, we were reading the text, we're annotating. Did you identify the main idea? They're looking. And then they're looking for examples of teachable moments that students can be a part of, so that they are hunting for the students that they can bring out and call out, whose question will be instructive to others. Now, you may say, well, what you're talking about is just good instruction. How is that a culturally responsive classroom? Well, oftentimes this is denied to Black and Latino low-income students because people are so obsessed with discipline and don't know how to create a sense of order in the classroom so that they can teach. But we've found that the breakthrough is to have a rigorous academic program and to teach the culture of high expectations that you expect in your classroom with students at the onset, because that sets the tone for learning.
That's awesome. I love it. I think I have often said everybody should teach kindergarten their first year teaching, because if they do, they would teach everything and never assume anything, and it'd be organized. And that's everybody from K through 12 needs an organized teacher who makes no assumptions and sets the groundwork and all of that. So I think that's fantastic. But I'm looking at our time, and I'm thinking that maybe we should try to move a little quicker. Or what do you guys think? So maybe we should move right down to hybrid blended models. And
Sure.
I think
So I'll
great.
quickly respond. First, Margaret, I always, and Kathleen, I always learn so much from listening to you guys talk too. I'm like taking notes over here on this side. It's such value in talking to your fellow charter leaders and learning how they're approaching um, different aspects of our journey here. But as far as hybrid and blended models, we run what we call a college model high school. So we spent some time really researching what it was about college where students really struggled that first year. When students, there's a high percentage of students who end up on academic probation their freshman year of college. And we wanted to see why. So we took some time really researching why students were ending up on academic probation their first year of college or junior college or a CTE program, any of that graduate work, and found a lot of it had to do with time management and the lack of autonomy in their life before getting to college. And so we wanted to create a high school that really focused around teaching students autonomy and time management. So we built this high school modeling it after a junior college where students pick and choose their classes that they take at the center. So they're meeting with a teacher. Remember, I mentioned earlier, they're part of a team. So where the teacher and student are together talking about that student's 10-year plan. And ours is actually what we call a three-legged stool, which is parent, student, teacher, team. So the parent, guardian, whoever's involved in that child's life is part of that team. If any one of those three doesn't put in the work, that stool tumbles over. So it's super important that all three of them are equal partners in their child's education. And with that, we have no bells at our school. Students might have a 2-hour break in the middle of the day, and they have to learn how to be responsible during that time. So they find a spot to sit, they study, they can leave campus, or they can come back. And many people think, well, there's no way that would work in my environment. We have students of all of backgrounds, of all different home environments, and our students are incredibly successful no matter where they come from. So just the idea of that school can look different. We always say we're the perfect school. We're just not perfect for everybody. And so we create an environment that allows students who are ready for that autonomy, flexibility, and freedom in their education to really own their education. What that includes is students graduating early. So we have a lot of students who come to us who are just tired of the system. They're tired of being in school. They're tired of the daily grind. They're ready to graduate and move on. And we help them get there. We have students who work full time and they're trying to take care of their family at home. So they're able to access the hybrid and blended model because they're only maybe at school 2 days a week. So now they can work a full-time job or many hours a week job to help support their family if that's what they need to do. We also have students who are homeless, and this model allows for them the flexibility to take care of their own personal needs while also gaining an education. We also provide an environment in which they can come to where there's food, shelter, showers, all of that for them to have a place to be, but not just for school and academics. So that blended model really allows us freedom and flexibility within supporting our students in a personalized model and what they need as a learner to go move on to the next step of their educational journey. So,
Awesome. Partnership schools. I noticed that Margaret spoke a little bit about her partnerships with San Luis, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, my alma mater. Got my bachelor's and master's degree there.
Go Mustangs.
Yes, absolutely. I got my master's degree in 1999 in computer-based education before the internet. So just think about that one for a minute.
And I'm from San Luis Obispo, so that's my heart and soul right there.
There you go. I love that town. It's fantastic. But anyway, and also I note you mentioned something about a real A grad school. We have a partnership. One of our programs at our school has a partnership with a foundation that does that runs an airport. So it's the Wathen Foundation. They run the airport in Riverside, and we have a facility that we have just built on the airport, the grounds of the airport. Currently, our students are a few miles away in a temporary facility, but we're moving. Well, when we move in, I don't know when we get out of purple in our county, but so it's very exciting because the students will have a integrated career technical education there with our partnership with the Wathen Foundation. It does take a village to have a really strong school, and we do not believe that the teacher can be the only source of learning for the student. I mean, the community is the classroom, the experts in the community. This is where people learn and grow. So we feel that the partnerships are great. It's well worth the time and energy invested, because it is kind of hard sometimes to get on the same page with a partner that you're working with, where you're working with, because you have competing needs. So do you have any partnerships, Mary?
I have to unmute, sorry. We do. We work closely with Chico State and Butte College for our students. We also are part of the Butte County Office of Education Consortium Group for the Strong Workforce. And so we're constantly working with outside entities for our CTE programs, but also our Advanced Scholar programs.
Awesome. Margaret, are you speaking? Because we can't hear you.
Apologies. I was just saying, Mary and Kathleen, I see a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
Andrew Edelman, Director of Evaluation and Design, was wondering about parent involvement at Mary's school. Can you assume they have, Andrew asked, the capacity to be effectively involved on the teacher, parent, student team?
I was actually just chatting back an answer, but I'll share with the greater community. I just said basically it is not without its challenges. Though on paper it looks like this perfect, beautiful system, we know that whenever you're trying to engage your greater community in the education of your students, there are incredible challenges, and sometimes you feel like block walls. But for us, we literally do everything in our power to ensure that our parent and student teacher team, so those three members, and if a student has an IEP, we're also including our education specialist in that model, and that force is actually a four-legged stool. We actually make sure that that teacher team meets for 1 hour at minimum every 4 weeks. Most of the time it's more often than that, but they are talking about that individual student's academic program. They're looking at every single class together. They're looking at every single assignment and grade. They're talking about objectives and classes. They're talking about assessment and accountability. They're talking about what are the students' dreams? What are their 10-year plans? What are their goals? How do we get there? So this is happening the entire school year. And the question really was, how do can you assume that parents have the capacity to be effectively involved? We are actually, just as Margaret and Kathleen mentioned earlier, we're teaching them as they enroll in our program what it means to be involved in their child's education. It's not asking, did you finish your homework, right? That's not involvement. It's actually, what is your homework? How do you get there? What are you learning? So it's definitely a different level of engagement, and it is not without its challenges, but it has proven so successful in our environment. And like I said, we have students from all walks of life and all different backgrounds and supports, and we've been able to help them build this relationship with their parent-teacher team and then graduate. Our graduation rate is 98% from high school. It's very high. It's actually the highest in the county. Someone earlier asked about students with disabilities, and we're 19% students with IEPs, which is also the highest in the county. And our students have the highest test scores on the state assessment. So this model of really engaging the student-teacher team, it has worked really well for us in our community and our environment. So it's been very positive, but it is quite a challenge. We coach our teachers on how to work with what we call volunteers. That's different than they've ever been done, ever had to do in the educational environment before. How do you work with somebody who's not paid to educate a student when they don't have to, but they're choosing to? And how are you modeling that and coaching? So we spend a lot of time on that with our staff.
Awesome.
Kathleen, I wonder if Mary would go ahead and address directly that question from Glendora Tremper, who is a special education director, and typed this question in the chat when Mary was talking about her smaller class size, Glendora asked, I would assume the smaller classrooms are also helping with your students with special needs. Is that true, Mary?
Yes, and I did address it privately to her just in the comment, but I can share really quick. I know we're running short on time. I'm sorry. Was that, the small class size is 100% of our students with IEPs are mainstreamed 100%. We don't have any system in our school where any students are not mainstreamed into traditional education classrooms. And so with that, they're exposed to quite a bit, just traditional social learning and all of that. So a class size of 12 allows us to really engage with students, to really personalize our approach to students, which also ups the quality of our general education educators, really understanding how to work with students who learn differently, right? Because a student with an IEP is a student who learns differently and needs a different access to that content. And so it helps our teachers actually across the board be better educators to have our students with IEPs within our traditional education classrooms. So yes, for sure, I think that has a huge impact on our students with disabilities.
Okay, and I just moved ahead a little bit because and certainly anybody who wants the PowerPoint, the PowerPoint, we have some videos and things in this PowerPoint that you're not going to see because we've had a great conversation, a robust conversation, and it just took a little longer, but it's good. It's all been good. So you're welcome to just email me. I'm at. You can get me through our Springs website. I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to attach the PowerPoint on this at this location, but anyway. So in terms of, I know we were going to talk about facility design. Is there anything either of you guys want to say? Not very many people get to choose their facilities. A lot of charter school people have to put up with whatever they have. So I don't know but if there's anything you want to, anybody wants to chime in on about facility design.
Gosh, Mary has built some beautiful facilities.
Yeah.
How's that campus in Chico?
I know we're so short on time though, but really quick. Yes, we were blessed with the opportunity to dream, vision, and build a facility that 100% matched our model, which is unreal, I know, in the educational environment, especially for charters. We just worked for years and years, found a property, and actually got to build a facility that 100% matched our model. For us, that was huge open spaces and flex spaces. We actually modeled our high school after a library at a college. So we actually toured colleges and thought, what creates an academic environment in which students feel like they're scholars, they're learning, they're growing, but they have autonomy, flexibility, and freedom to learn at their way and style. So we actually created an open structure environment in which students could come and go out of classes as they so fit and have spaces to learn in an open structure environment. So super fun. I know we don't have a lot of time to talk about that, but I'll happily talk with anybody who has more info.
I highly recommend this book for everybody. If you're doing facility design, it's called The Third Teacher. I happen to have it like right by my bed, so I can run in there and get it. And it's full of fantastic pictures and ideas of what makes a really 21st century learning space, because the facility does matter. The first 10 years of my time running charter schools, I said the facility doesn't matter because we had to make do. And I've come to the conclusion that the facility does matter. It limits, if you're going to do project-based learning, but you don't have any room in your classrooms for kids to gather and do their work on their projects, you're not going to really get your model taught. So facilities do matter. But anyway, all right. So looking at this list, we only have about 7 minutes. So why don't we just come off of this, do whichever item you want to do. So we'll start with Margaret.
Oh, I want to talk. This is not my item, but I'd like to talk about accelerated learning.
Okay.
We going into the summer, we had read a lot of the research from NWEA anticipating that there were going to be huge COVID-19 learning gaps in mathematics in particular. So we wanted to try and get ahead of it. And I tell you this story to say that we just got our interim assessments in mathematics back, and we've had no COVID-19 slide in mathematics. And what we did was, before we let school out, we allocated a significant amount of time to assessing each and every student in mathematics and English language arts, and creating an individualized plan using a software. I've mentioned it before, and it's called MobyMax. And it provided an individualized, personalized experience for each student that they went through over the summer. And we trained their teacher, their parents in how to use it. We have something called a parent academy. And this is something that we did before the pandemic, that we had already trained the parents up on how to use this. So when the pandemic hit, it has become very useful. The other thing is that our curriculum in mathematics is created by Achievement First, a network of high-performing charter schools in New York, focusing on Brooklyn, and they have a program called Navigator. Our math achievement went up, in the double digits after we adopted their model. That's the Navigator model of curriculum and instruction, and it also comes with coaching, which was the most important thing for our master teachers, who are our curriculum instruction leads, and our teachers. So when we talk about accelerated learning, that has been a part of our model before and after the pandemic.
What about you, Mary?
I was on mute, sorry. For us, it's a similar model, but we've always, our accelerated learning really is looking at assessment data, determining where that student is, and we actually create their educational learning program around where that student is academically. So if the student is able to access grade level curriculum, but at a much faster, or grade level standards, but at a much faster pace, we accelerate that student to the level that they're willing to go alongside their parents. So it's totally at a personal level. Same with interventions and students who might be struggling in areas. We're sharing with them grade level standards, but just like many of you, we have a robust intervention program that's targeting instruction to fill gaps and holes. So we're not slowing down learning. We're always expecting it to be accelerating and growing, regardless of where we are. Even during the pandemic, we've dealt with a lot of trauma here in Butte County in the last couple of years. And through it all, our students are still growing with a lot of rigor. They're accelerating. And so we're constantly looking at that student as an individual and piling their program and building their program to accelerate them beyond where they are.
Yeah. I guess for me, I'd like to say that for us, multi-age classrooms and looping are two areas that are extremely beneficial for personalized learning, because we believe that everything starts with the relationship teacher and student. And so methods and strategies and curriculum can only be as good as the relationship between the student and the teacher. And pretty much almost any method of instruction will work if the relationship between the student and teacher is strong. So the multi-age classrooms we have in some of our centers, we have lower elementary and upper elementary. Kinder and TK are separate because kinder is, a different developmental level. But first, second, and third are all together. And that means the child, if they stay all 3 years, they're with the same teacher for 3 years. And the teacher has to be responsive to all the different levels in their class, so they're not just assuming that everybody's at the same place because they're in the same grade, which we know is not true. You can have a bunch of 9-year-olds in the class. They're not all ready for 9-year-old content, So, and then the same thing with looping. Looping is like what Waldorf does, which is the teacher and the children stay together. They're all the same age, the children, but they stay together for a number of years. It could be just 2 years of looping. So the first grade teacher is also the second grade teacher, and then she goes back down to first grade and the kids go up to another teacher. Or it could be the way Waldorf does it is all 9 years. They start in kinder with the teacher and they go all the way up. Can you even imagine trying to get your teachers on board with that one?
I know.
We
We've
don't-
got 10. We're at the close, Kathleen.
We are, yeah. Okay, that's great. Well, thank you, everybody. I know we didn't get to everything we said we were going to get to, but if you email me, I will send you the PowerPoint, and you can see the whole presentation. And I think it was a very nice conversation. Thank you, ladies, for joining me today.
It's great to hang out with you all today.
Awesome, wonderful.
And thanks for being the heroes during this educational journey we're on right now. It is truly a joy and blessing to have fellow charter leaders to be talking and throwing ideas off of during this unprecedented time. So hang in there, friends. We will get through this as we get through everything, and we just really appreciate your time today.